this is one of my favourite topics in terms of the importance of looking after ourselves to be able to do everything else. I mean, some of you I may have met before. My background's HR. Now I do a lot of coaching, and particular areas of interest is self-compassion and drawing on positive psychology resources. So this bit around our self-care and how we replenish our resources is really central to that. So that's what we're going to be thinking about today. And one thing I want to sort of stress is the clues in the title. Self-care is about the things that we can find to do that we enjoy, that are beneficial for us. It's not about setting ourselves unrealistic action plans or expectations that actually we're then going to be beating ourselves up that we haven't managed to achieve. So it's about working out things that we can do that work for us, things that we'll enjoy doing, as well as the things that are beneficial. But let's also start by acknowledging or recognising the places that we may be feeling at the moment, that sense of so much happening, not being able to keep on top of things, or, you know, playing with that urgent, important thing all the time, and everything feels like it's the top right-hand corner, and thinking about that. But then I would like us to be really honest with ourselves as to the challenges and obstacles. So I just love this picture. It just makes me smile every time I see it. But I've used it before because it just makes me smile. But what I would like us to think about are, you know, what really does get in the way of your self-care. Time is something that people are often tell me, and I'm not disputing at any level, that for a lot of people time is a very thinly stretched resource across all the things that we have. But sometimes it's recognizing that self-care doesn't have to be time consuming. Sometimes it's as much about our habits or the things that we're doing that are not helpful for our well-being as the things that we always think we'll get round to doing one day. Often it's a barrier that it's about something that's indulgent or selfish, and that we are particularly, you know, there is that strong gender stereotyping as women that believe that we have to put other people first. I've just finished, or last year I did some research into self-compassion in women working in HR, and one of the key barriers they showed in that was actually the belief that they always had to put people first. But it's recognizing a lot of that thinking is flawed when we look at the evidence. Sometimes people think it's too expensive. They think about it, you know, it's an expensive spa experience or gym membership or something, but it doesn't need to be. And sometimes actually it's about not really knowing what to do, not really knowing what to start. So I'd like you to think, I was going to put you into breakout rooms, but it's probably not really worth it with just a small group. So perhaps you'd like to just share here, what would you say are your obstacles to finding time? And I'm guessing they're obstacles because if you got it all sussed, you wouldn't be here. So what would you say are obstacles for you?
Mine would be myself. I'm putting myself bottom of my own list, if I'm honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So very common. Everyone comes before me.
Yeah.
I think you've touched on it, but time is a massive one.
Yeah.
Especially if you've got kids and work, and then, you know, I often feel like I'm running at 10 million miles an hour, and I don't ever then have time to think about what I need for me. I think just to touch on your point about people in HR always feeling they've got to put people first, I totally agree with that. And I often feel that people in HR, no one ever really looks after the people in HR. We're looking after everyone else, but we almost need like a counsellor as well, someone to go to.
Yes, it's quite an isolating role as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
From that perspective, last year we did, it wasn't this session, we did there's a self-care power hour that I've run dozens of times specifically for HR on exactly that basis. You use all your resources to look after everybody else. And I like your point, actually. When life feels so busy, you don't actually have that space to stop and think about what you want to do because you're too busy keeping all those balls in the air. So hopefully this session will give you just that little bit of thinking space. Any other thoughts?
I think that overwhelm you just touched on there is kind of a big one as well. I think when I do have a bit of time, because there's so many other balls I'm juggling, I just think I'll be better off putting some time into, some stuff towards work or sorting the house out, or like, something else that's practically potentially going to help me down the line, rather than actually going, maybe what would be good for me would be to actually just take some time and relax, or go for a walk, or do something like that. I think it's not forefront of my mind as being the most helpful thing for me in that moment, which is probably more of a mindset thing for me to change.
My experience, actually, so much of it is ingrained from childhood. I was brought up that doing nothing was wasting time. And I asked my mum to dig out a picture the other day, and I don't think I'm brave enough to post it on social media, but it was a picture of me as a brownie at whatever age that was, to do my promise proudly in my uniform. And I can still recite that promise if anybody else, the fact that our brownie guide thinks of others before herself. And it's like so ingrained that we just don't, so it's the others as well as the task. And actually sometimes that is the self-care, sometimes taking that bit of time to do that decluttering or tidying that helps you might be the self-care thing, but if it's the default, that it's not helpful. Any other thoughts?
I thought you'd find it quite amusing that I was late, which says a lot about my self-care prioritisation. So sorry I was late, but I thought you'd get the irony with that one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, actually, very good. We, as I said right at the beginning, we had over 50 people signed up for this session, and we've got, it's lovely to have you here, but obviously a lot of other people have got other things ahead of looking after themselves, rather than viewing it as an investment in their time. So I'm very glad you have made it, even if you were a few minutes late.
I was late too, sorry.
Life happens. That's part of the challenge. Okay, let's just look at a bit of the theory behind it, because sometimes what we need is that convincing bit. Our brain wants the evidence to give us the permission. And this is the model of well-being that I like for its simplicity. It's Dodge is from positive psychology as the science of what making life better. And her model describes we have a good level of well-being when we've got a balance between the challenges we have to face and the resources we have available. And those are about the psychological challenges, the social ones, the physical ones. And what tends to happen, and certainly over the last few years, when the challenges have increased, when we should be putting more time and effort into replenishing our resources, we don't, because the challenges feel so great. So the balance just becomes even more out of kilter. So, thinking about that, to be able to do thinking about how you can keep that balance. I need to replenish my resources to be able to do the challenges. And then the area of the psychological well-being, I think, is a really interesting one, because I don't know about you, but at the end of most days, I'm tired, but it's my brain and that's probably the most feeling the drained bit. It's not the physical bit. It's about how you keep your psychological well-being in a good place. And for me, certainly, exercise and physical exercise is the bit that recharges my mental health. But certainly thinking about what are we doing in relation to our psychological well-being that may be helpful or not helpful. So the self-acceptance is about, are we nice to ourselves? Are we accepting ourselves? Are we an inner friend or an inner critic? And the research shows, as I mentioned very briefly at the beginning, it's flawed thinking to drive yourself through judgments and criticism. Actually, the evidence shows we achieve more through that place of being a supportive internal coach rather than constant critic. Having positive relations, whether that's family, friends, work, community, having those meaningful connections are necessary. Having opportunity for growth, whether that's any area that's of interest to you, that growth mindset is very beneficial. Having purpose in life, thinking about our job, is it in an area that actually is meaningful for us? Do we have that sense of purpose within what we're doing? Environmental mastery, means if you are doing something, you've got the competence to do it. You feel okay. You know that sense when you start a new job and you don't even know how to, access the intranet, or, in the days when we were in an office, how the coffee machine works, or that sort of thing. And the impact that has on our well-being. So it's feeling that we have the skills to cope with that environment. And then the last area is around the autonomy, that level of freedom we have to do what we want to do, and that will be very different for different people, which is great, because it will be difficult if we were all, some people want very clear micromanaged structures, processes. Other people just want total freedom and spirit to do whatever they want. But we need to think about all these different aspects. So how can we find our energy? How can we capture the energy that we need or want to be able to fly through all the things that are on the list of things that we need to do and want to do? Because I'm guessing it's the want to do or would like to do are the things that actually get missed off. So these are the things, I guess, that if you ask anybody, what do I need to do to look after myself? It will be sleep, diet, exercise are the main ones. But actually, do we really look after this in a sensible way? When we are busy, sleep is one of the things we tend to cut back on. Or would you agree? Do you have sort of a late night working if you've really got something to do? But actually, it's totally counterproductive, with increasing evidence showing the importance of sleep. Routinely sleeping less than 6 to 7 hours a night affects our immune system. It's a lifestyle factor in whether you develop Alzheimer's, diabetes, cardiovascular disease. And when you want to sleep more, you don't get enough sleep, it's disrupting hormones. And to summarize, or Matthew Walker, the lead scientist, his summary of it, he basically says the shorter you sleep, the shorter your lifespan, which is a fairly strong motivator for making sure that sleep is looked after. And the research again shows physical and mental impairments caused by lack of sleep dwarf those caused by wrong diet or exercise. So how do you look after your sleep? How do you develop healthier sleep habits, in terms of caffeine, blue light, on technology, exercise, a winding down routine, temperature, those sorts of things. But in terms of self-care, how could you make sleep? You may be fine with sleep, but if you're not, just think about how you could have more higher quality sleep. Diet, obviously not going to go into details around what a healthy diet means. I'm quite sure you would know the gist about healthy eating. Regime, could you do with cutting down on refined carbohydrates, so you get a sugar rush followed by an energy drop? But actually, I'd also like you to think from the self-care perspective of your approach to food. Do you eat regular meals? Do you eat, I use the word mindfully, sort of with caution, but do you actually appreciate food when you're eating it? Or are you just shoveling it down to recharge while you're checking your emails because you knew you were hungry? Actually, is a meal a nice part of the day? Are you appreciating that? So rather than just a refueling. So think about that as well. Activity. A lot of us probably have got on a day-to-day basis a fairly sedentary lifestyle with desk-based jobs, and it's not about trying to have high impact exercise or doing that a couple of times a week. It is positive, but actually it's about low impact frequent movement. It's about taking regular breaks, moving away from your desk, taking a few deep breaths, just every half an hour will all be really beneficial. And then finding an activity that you do like, whether it's walking dog, whether it's doing some particular sport, whether it's yoga, maybe, they're all things, and try and get a mix. The positive emotions in many ways are outcomes of people taking more effort on those other elements. For example, if you do go for a walk outside, you're getting the endorphins of doing exercise, but actually light is nature's antidepressant. So, if you get outside every day, you're helping your positive emotions. And we know from research that building positive emotions builds resources, and the more resources you have, then it builds broaden and build theory. It builds more positive emotions. So you create that upward spiral. And then managing stress here, again, not going into a whole managing stress session, but you know, thinking about work habits, the routines you might have got into that actually add rather than mitigate potential stress. So throwing loads of thoughts and ideas at you in terms of how we might find a bit more energy. And I'd like to refer you to this quote. You may have seen Viktor Frankl was an Austrian neurologist, psychologist that actually survived the concentration camp. And he noticed that those who didn't lose their sense of purpose were the ones that survived longest. But in his book that subsequently developed into a therapy, he noted that between stimulus and response, there's a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So if you just focus on that first bit, if you think when there is some trigger, something happens, you respond. But actually, at an unconscious level, a lot of the time, you are choosing your response. A lot of it is a habitual response. But actually, if we catch that stimulus, that thought, and consciously choose different options that might be available, and then consciously choose an option that might be better for us, then actually those small changes can gradually make a huge difference. So what actions are you going to take to look after your physical and mental well-being? And just for simplicity, I'm going to stick to the well-known HR stop, start, continue model and ask you to think about what you're currently doing that is not good for your well-being, and you can stop, or you could stop, and I bet you could identify quite a few things, and think about all different aspects of your life and what you could start doing that would enhance your well-being. And I'd be encouraging you not to be trying to make any big, huge changes. Small stepping stones will be a far more effective way of doing it. As I said, if you set yourself up for something and then you don't do it, then you'll be doing even less self-care, because you'll probably be beating yourself up for it. And then what are you currently doing that you know is good for you and you need to make sure that you carry on doing? Okay, so let's stop that and give you a chance to have a chat. Actually, we've got a few more. Hi, Elaine. I was going to say nice to see you. I can't see you, but nice that you joined us. I'm going to put you into a couple of groups because I know you will have a bit more of a chat if you're in quieter groups, and ask you just to take a few minutes to reflect on all those things that I've just suggested or mentioned or put into your conscious thinking, and write down a few things under each of those: stop, start, and continue. I'm sure you don't need the slide, I'm sure you know that model. Just to give you an opportunity, you know, exactly as it was Katie that said at the beginning, wasn't it? When you don't often have that time to stop and think, what do I need? What would help me? And say, remove that voice that is telling you it's indulgent or that you always have to put people first. Sometimes we do, you know, sometimes the reality is we do, but actually it doesn't have to be the default option. Okay, so let me put you into a couple of groups. And how are we doing? Oh, we're doing all right. I'm going to give you a little bit of time because I want you to actually really get the benefit from having the chance. So I'm going to give you 15 minutes in your group to focus on, view this as self-care time. All right, and you've gone into groups, and I'll see you back afterwards.